So welcome once again to topic 5 of scripting for security. And in this topic, we're looking at security scripts and some scripts that are mentioned in this unit specifically. So some examples of some malicious scripts which are specified in the descriptor of this unit are these NSA tools. Now the NSA tools were a set of tools that were released by a group of hackers called the Shadow Brokers in 2013. And through these tools, they publicly embarrassed the NSA and damaged its intelligence gathering capabilities. And at the same time, put some sophisticated cyber weapons into the hands of anybody who wanted them. And they gave an exploit to the authors of the WannaCry ransomware exploit, which infected a lot of computers. So how did this actually happen? Well, it happened in stages, and the first leak of information was on August 13, 2016, or as we say in the UK, the 13th of August. And a tweet was announced a paste bin page and a GitHub repository containing instructions for obtaining and decrypting the content of a file. And this file had some, malicious tools in it. So the second leak was on October the 31st in 2016, and there were a list of supposedly compromised servers, and some undisclosed tools were announced, all with quite silly names. Dewdrop, Incision, Jackladder, to name a few. And there was a link to this material and a password. And then the third leak contained 60 folders named in a way to serve as reference to tools. And you were to email the Shadow Brokers with the name of the software that you wanted, and they would email you back a Bitcoin address that you could make payment with. So that was the third leak. And then the fourth leak was on the 8th of April, 2017. A password was announced, and files were able to be unlocked. Now, seemingly that this particular leak, the fourth leak, was in response to former President Trump's attack against a Syrian airfield. So this file down here, this EQ group, equation group auction file, contained a collection of tools for compromising Linux and Unix-based environments. And then the fifth leak was on the 14th of April 2017. There was a tweet and a message and some folders, Oddjob, Swift, and Windows. Now, the fifth leak was suggested to be the most damaging release, and in it was a tool exploit called Eternal Blue. And Eternal Blue is the particular exploit in Windows that is used to create a particular ransomware. It's an exploit against the SMB protocol. 200,000 machines were infected, and the Eternal Blue contains kernel shellcode to load a non-persistent double pulsar backdoor. I'm sure that's much more exciting, sounds much more exciting than it actually is. So this particular Eternal Blue exploit was particularly damaging to Windows in 2017 and all the systems running Windows. So in May 2017, the WannaCry ransomware crypto worm targeted computers running Windows by encrypting data and demanding a ransom in Bitcoin. So it propagated through the Eternal Blue developed by the NSA for older Windows systems, which was actually leaked by the shadow brokers. The attack was halted within a few days of discovery, but it was estimated to have affected 200,000 computers across 150 countries, with total damages ranging from hundreds of millions to billions. And in December 2017, the United Kingdom, United States, and Australia asserted that North Korea were actually behind the attack. So that's a little bit of background about the NSA tools and the NSA tools leaks. Here is an image of what it looks like if a computer is infected with the WannaCry ransomware. So the user of the computer will see this on the screen, and they have to send $300 worth of Bitcoin to this address down here. There's the Bitcoin address there to unlock their computer. If they don't unlock the computer by the time the timer has run out, then they'll lose their files. Their files will be deleted. So that's what it looks like. Now, there's also the Petya, which is a malware for Windows-based systems. And variants of this were first seen in March 2016. And it actually was propagated by email attachments. And it was used for a global cyber attack that actually targeted Ukraine. Okay, and this ransomware also used the Eternal Blue exploit. If we have a little look, so there's a Petya ransomware. That's what it looks like on your screen. So part of the theory of this course is that we're aware of and we can describe particular ransomware attacks and the results of these, and what would happen. So those are two examples there. Now that we've looked at the NSA tools and two examples of ransomware, this part is about the mitigation of that. So some examples of mitigation. File systems keep snapshots of data that they hold, which can be used to recover the contents of files in the event that ransomware doesn't actually disable this capability. So there are some file systems, including this one, the ZFS, that are less vulnerable to malware than a Windows file system like NTFS. So ZFS is used in large-scale servers. It allows you to split data across multiple servers, and a data center is where I've seen it in action, for example. Another example would be to monitor network traffic. So let's say someone clicks on an email attachment that has some malware in it. It may start up an unusual connection. And here's an example here of a BitTorrent connection showing in a Wireshark trace. Here's an example of a Python sockets library. Okay, and what this actually does is we've got two functions here. There's an email sending function and a honeypot that will allow us to actually start a connection on port 23, which is the telnet port. Okay, so I've put together a list. Now, this isn't a comprehensive list or anything like that, but this is just some of the things that I would suggest would be sensible mitigation techniques, especially against a ransomware attack. So first thing is backups. Always, always, always have some sort of backup policy in place, because if a system was corrupted, it's quite easy to say, well, you know what, just erase it, delete it, and we'll start again, and restore things from backups. So that's number one. Number two is to try and reduce reliance on Windows. So something to note is that many of the malware attacks and kind of dangerous ransomware is targeted at Windows. So if we reduce our reliance on Windows, then we can also reduce our vulnerability, the size of the attack surface that we have exposed. So, I mean, Windows is quite good if you want to play games. Some games run quite well on Windows laptops, but that comes at the cost of being much more vulnerable to a cyber attack. So log ingestion management. How are logs being aggregated and collected, and how are we managing that? And that's something that we look at a little bit later on in this course. Updating systems should be a fairly obvious one, ensuring that everything's patched on a regular basis. User training, user awareness training, user system training, user disaster recovery training. Okay, so do the users know what to do if they go away for lunch and come back and they see our ransomware screen in front of them? Disaster recovery testing. What would we do if everything was broken? So if we came in tomorrow to the office, or we sat down at our desk to start work and nothing worked, everything was broken, what do we do? Okay, now it's all very well for me to sit here and say, well, if I came in and sat down, went to turn on my computer and it didn't work, I would probably think, right, first of all, let's check the power. Maybe try a different power cable. That didn't work. I'd probably think, well, could be the power supply. So I'd go and get another power supply, put it in. But if you're, responsible for, say, 100 machines, that might not be possible for you to troubleshoot each one individually like that. You maybe need some sort of immediate disaster recovery test. So escalation audits are audits of escalation systems. So for example, if something breaks, who do you escalate the issue to? Who's in the chain of responsibility? So if you sat down in an office and your keyboard stopped working, who would you talk to? And if you, so you need to know who to talk to, and are they responsible for that? And then who do they talk to? Where do they get another keyboard from? Okay, so that's an audit of the chain of escalation. Who do you phone? What's their phone number? That kind of thing. Who exactly do you contact? What's their name? What hours do they work? What happens if this happens at night? Do they have kids? Do they work weekends? Do you have their mobile number? So that's a chain of escalation. That's an audit of the escalation process. Permission audits. Who has permission to do what? Do people in the sales team have permission to delete spreadsheets in the finance folder? It's a very silly example. Change and patch management. Who's updating what? When are they updating it? What are they updating? Which version are they updating it to? What version was it on before? When exactly are they doing this? Who's testing it and what systems are impacted? Should all be documented. Generally, what happens in change management is a list of updates are gathered, and these would be run on a Saturday and tested on a Sunday. And if there's any problem, moving the system back to previous versions before patching. Finally, network vulnerability scanning. So scanning the network to see if you can find any problems with it. So that's just a list of mitigation techniques that I've put together. It's not a complete list by any means. It's just some examples. So if someone were to say to you, what's the primary mitigation technique against ransomware? The answer is backing up the systems. Now, if you had all your staff running on virtual machines, running Windows virtual machines, through VMware or through your virtual machine hypervisor management software, you should be able to create a backup schedule that could back these up every hour, or every day, or maybe even every 10 or every 5 minutes. Now, if someone came to you, phoned you up and said, my computer has a ransomware message on it, you could be like, don't worry about it. I'll just roll you back 5 minutes. So in the worst case scenario, they're going to lose 5 minutes of work that they've done. Okay, so that would be a very, very, very sensible approach. Probably the final thing to say on this is the worst thing that you can do in any situation where any system's compromised is panic. Okay, so I've worked with people before. As soon as things start to go wrong, they start to get really stressed and panic. And what you have to think is, these are just computers. They're not, they're not people. We're not working in accident emergency department in a hospital. It's just a computer. Okay, so that is topic 5. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do is we have our virtual machine here, and I'm going to run IP address show on the machine. IP address show. I've spelled address with 3 Ds. That'll be why. Okay, so 192.168.0.23. So let me just over here. I'm going to do SSH EC at 192.168.0.23. And it's going to ask me to put the password in. So now I'm logged into the machine, the SFS machine here. Okay, so what we have in the machine is we have a directory called opt. Okay, and opt's usually where you store optional software. Sometimes. Okay, so if we go into opt, we'll see that there's another directory called labs. And if we go into labs, we'll see that there's a file or two. One file called wdi-country.csv. So if I look at the contents of wdi-country.csv, you'll see that there's lots and 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 lots of text in here. Okay, this is a CSV file, and each line is delimited by a comma. Okay, so if I were to do, and word count the number of lines in there, we'll see there's 264 lines. Now, just to get an idea of what each line looks like, we'll have a look at the very last line. So this is one line of data. If you imagine this in a spreadsheet, each of these would be in a different cell. So that'd be column A, column B, column C. And actually, this file is actually WDI countries stands for the World Development Index. It was just a way that I could get a big CSV file to you. So the last 2 countries by alphabetization are Zambia and Zimbabwe. So that's why they are the last 2 lines in the file. So what we're going to do on this file, is we are going to do some awking. Now, the basics of an awk program are a pattern and then an action. Okay, so for example, if I run awk, and then inside my awk program, I say print $0 on the file, it's going to print the whole thing. But if I say print $1 on the file, it's only going to print the first column. Now, by convention, awk treats the field separator not as a comma, but as a space. So we need to tell awk that the field separator is a comma. Okay, and we do that by specifying this. Capital F just means field separator. And we say in quotes what the field separator. The field separator could be anything, right? It could be a T, or it could be a slash, or it could be a, okay, so we're saying awk, this field separated by commas file, and print column 1, okay? And here's the file. So if we run that, we'll see we're getting the first column out now, okay? So column 2, column 3, and so on. Okay, so in the first part of this lab, there are some different examples, okay, that show how to do different things. For example, if we specify this regular expression pattern, the caret symbol and the capital A means find things in the file that start with capital A in the second column, okay? And these searches, these awk commands get gradually bigger, okay? So there's an example of each that show you how to build up these awk commands. And then once you've had 6 or 7 examples, there are some questions to answer, okay? So for example, if starts with A matches any pattern that starts with A, and A end, or A dollar, and basically means ends with lowercase a, matches any word that ends in A, can you find any country whose currency ends in O and starts with A? So I told you how to find something that starts with a letter and ends with a letter. But what you need to do, right, is so we've got details about each country here. So if we do print $4, okay, we're getting the actual name of the country. This is the official name. So for example, Nigeria isn't just called Nigeria, it's called the Federal Republic of Nigeria, okay, the Kingdom of the Netherlands. That's a continent, okay, the Republic of Mauritius, the Islamic Republic of Mauritania. Now, one of these columns is the currency. So you need to work your way along and try and find the currency column. And then once you've done that, can you find a currency that starts with a capital A and ends with O, lowercase, okay? Then there's some more searches to do. When does the fiscal year end in Pakistan? What a pub quiz question that is. Oh yes, of course. The fiscal year in Pakistan, that I absolutely know when that ends. So all you need to do is open up the file with awk and work your way through these questions here. And that is, let me just zoom back to the top, Scripting for Security Lab 5.